Act 1. The Face of the Future, Hijacked. The year is 1987. It's a world teetering on the edge of the digital revolution. Personal computers are becoming household items. Synthesizers dominate the pop charts, and a new kind of celebrity has emerged. One born not of flesh and blood, but of flickering pixels and processed sound waves. His name was Max Headroom. He wasn't real, but in the neon-drenched landscape of the late 80s, he felt more real and certainly cooler than most humans. Max Headroom was a fictional artificial intelligence character portrayed by actor Matt Frewer. With his slick-back hair, Ray-Ban sunglasses, perpetually stuttering, glitchy speech patterns, and a smug, digitally rendered charisma, Max was conceived as a cyberpunk critique of corporate media and television culture. He hosted talk shows, starred in music videos, and most famously, became the iconic, stuttering pitchman for Coca-Cola's Catch the Wave campaign. He was everywhere. Max Headroom wasn't just a character. He was a phenomenon, the embodiment of the sleek, slightly unsettling, computer-generated future that seemed just around the corner. But on the chilly evening of November 22nd, 1987, in the city of Chicago, Max Headroom's carefully crafted digital persona was about to be hijacked and twisted into something bizarre, chaotic, and utterly terrifying. It was a Sunday night. Families across Chicago were settling in after the weekend. Around 9:14 p.m., viewers tuned into WGN-TV, Channel 9, a major local broadcast station. They were watching the sports segment of the nightly news, expecting highlights from the Chicago Bears game. Suddenly, without warning, the screen went black. For 15 jarring seconds, there was only darkness and a low, buzzing hum. Then, just as abruptly, a figure appeared. It was a man wearing a cheap, rubbery Max Headroom mask. Behind him, a sheet of corrugated metal spun hypnotically, creating a crude, disorienting background. The figure writhed and bobbed erratically. There was no coherent audio, only a harsh, buzzing, electronic noise, like a malfunctioning machine. The intrusion lasted only about 25 seconds. Just as quickly as it had begun, the signal hijack ended, and WGN's broadcast returned to the bewildered sports anchor, Dan Roan, who stammered, "Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I." Engineers at WGN were baffled. Someone had managed to overpower their broadcast signal, transmitting this bizarre, silent message directly into thousands of homes. They immediately began searching for the source of the rogue transmission, but the hijacker was gone. Viewers were left confused, perhaps slightly amused, thinking it might have been a strange prank or a technical glitch. No one could have predicted that this was merely the opening act for a far more disturbing performance later that night. The Max Headroom imposter had tasted the power of the airwaves, and he wasn't finished yet. Act 2. The broadcast from the underground. For about 2 hours after the WGN incident, the television broadcasts across Chicago returned to normal. Viewers settled back into their evening routines. Many tuned into WTTW, Channel 11, Chicago's public broadcasting station, known for its educational programming and British imports. That night, they were airing an episode of the beloved science fiction classic, Doctor Who. At approximately 11:15 p.m., during a scene featuring the Doctor, the signal abruptly cut out. But this time, it wasn't just a brief flash of static or a moment of darkness. The hijack was back, and this time, the pirate broadcaster was prepared. The same figure appeared on screen, the man in the crude Max Headroom mask swaying erratically in front of the spinning corrugated metal backdrop. But this time there was audio, and it was deeply, profoundly strange. The masked figure, his voice electronically distorted and echoing, began a rambling, nonsensical monologue. He mocked WGN and its sports anchor, Chuck Swirsky, shouting, I think I'm better than Chuck Swirsky. Frickin' liberal. He hummed the theme song to the cartoon Clutch Cargo. He held up a Pepsi can, uttering the Coca-Cola slogan, "Catch the Wave," a direct jab at Max Headroom's real-life advertising gig. His laughter was manic, distorted, and unsettling. The broadcast became increasingly bizarre and chaotic. The masked figure rambled about his brother, made strange noises, and seemed to be interacting with someone off-screen. At one point, he held up a rubber glove, saying, "My brother is wearing the other one," before putting it on and declaring, "It's dirty." He then removed the glove and sang, "Your love is fading." The scene took a truly vulgar and shocking turn. The figure bent over, exposing his bare buttocks to the camera. An accomplice, seemingly a woman off-screen, then spanked him repeatedly with a fly swatter. Throughout this, the masked man screamed and moaned in mock pain, his distorted voice echoing. The entire transmission lasted for about 90 seconds. It was a bizarre, almost Dadaist performance of electronic noise, pop culture references, crude humor, and unsettling visuals. It felt like a transmission from an underground bunker, a coded message from a disturbed mind. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the screen went black. WTTW engineers, caught completely off guard, frantically worked to regain control of their signal, but by the time they did, the hijacker had once again vanished into the ether. This time, the effect on viewers was different. The first incident had been strange, perhaps even funny. This second, longer, and far more bizarre broadcast was deeply unsettling. It felt transgressive, almost violent in its absurdity. Thousands of Chicago residents flooded the station's phone lines, demanding an explanation. What they had just witnessed felt like a violation, a crack in the normally controlled and sanitized world of television broadcasting. Someone had broken through, and they had brought a message of pure, electronic chaos. Act 3. Cracking the code? The Signal Intrusion. In the aftermath of the second, longer broadcast Signal Intrusion, BSI, panic and confusion gripped the city and the broadcasting industry. This wasn't just a prank. It was a sophisticated and audacious attack on the integrity of the airwaves. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, immediately launched a full-scale investigation. How had someone managed to hijack the broadcast signals of two major television stations in one night? The technical feat itself was remarkable for 1987. To understand how it happened, one needs to understand how television signals were transmitted at the time. Stations like WGN and WTTW sent their programming signals via microwave links from their downtown studios to the transmitters located atop the massive John Hancock Center, one of the tallest skyscrapers in Chicago. From there, the signal was broadcast across the city. The investigators quickly determined that the hijacker hadn't attacked the main transmitters on the Hancock Center. Instead, they had targeted the crucial microwave links connecting the studios to the transmitter. By broadcasting their own, more powerful microwave signal at the exact same frequency, aimed directly at the receiving dishes on the Hancock Center, they could effectively overpower the legitimate studio feed and replace it with their own content. This was not a simple task. It required significant technical knowledge and specialized equipment. The hijacker would have needed a powerful microwave transmitter, a directional antenna, and line-of-sight access to the Hancock Center's receiving dishes. They also would have needed to know the exact frequencies used by both WGN and WTTW, information that wasn't publicly available but could potentially be obtained by scanning the airwaves or through insider knowledge. The WGN hijack was relatively simple because their microwave link to the Hancock Center was less powerful, making it easier to override. The WTTW hijack was far more difficult. WTTW used a more powerful microwave signal, and their receiving dish was located higher up on the skyscraper. This suggested the hijacker was either operating from a very tall building with a clear view of the Hancock Center, or possibly even using a mobile transmitter from a vehicle parked at a high elevation. The increased power and duration of the second hijack also indicated that the perpetrators might have been testing their capabilities during the first incident at WGN. The investigation focused on finding the physical location from which the pirate signal originated. The FBI analyzed signal strength data and triangulated the likely source to a region on the north side of Chicago. They scoured rooftops and high-rise apartments, looking for any evidence of a makeshift broadcast setup. They questioned former employees of the TV stations, disgruntled engineers, and members of the underground hacker and phreaker communities that were thriving in the pre-internet era. Despite the technical sophistication of the hack, the content of the broadcast itself offered few clues. The rambling monologue, the pop culture references, the crude humor, it all seemed designed to confuse and mock rather than convey any clear message or motive. Was it a political statement? A critique of consumer culture? Or simply an elaborate, nihilistic prank by someone with the technical skills to pull it off? The mask itself was a key element. Max Headroom, the symbol of corporate-controlled, futuristic television, was subverted and turned into a grotesque, chaotic figure. This suggested the hackers might have been part of the burgeoning cyberpunk or counterculture movement, using the icon of the mainstream media to broadcast a message of anarchy. But every lead went cold. No one claimed responsibility. No suspects were ever formally identified. The equipment used was never found. The identity of the man in the mask and his fly-swatter-wielding accomplice remained a complete mystery. The Max Headroom incident became a ghost story for the digital age, a chilling example of how easily the signals that define our reality could be hijacked and twisted into a bizarre nightmare. Act 4. The ripple effect and the online cult following. While the official investigation eventually ran cold, the Max Headroom incident left a deep and lasting scar on the cultural landscape. In the immediate aftermath, it sparked widespread debate about the security of broadcast television and the potential for media manipulation. For the first time, the vulnerability of the seemingly monolithic television networks had been laid bare. If a couple of pranksters with microwave equipment could take over the airwaves in a major city, what else was possible? Could terrorists or foreign agents do the same? The incident led to increased security measures for broadcast signals across the country. But the true legacy of the Max Headroom incident unfolded years later, with the rise of the Internet. The bizarre, unsettling footage, often shared on grainy VHS tapes in the underground communities, found a new life online. It became one of the earliest examples of truly viral, user-generated weirdness, a foundational text for internet mystery culture. On platforms like YouTube and Reddit, a new generation of digital detectives began to dissect the footage frame by frame. They analyzed the distorted audio, searching for hidden messages or clues to the hacker's identity. They debated the meaning behind the strange symbols and references, the Pepsi can, the spinning background, the fly swatter. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about media control, counterculture, and the uncanny valley where technology meets absurdity. Numerous theories about the identities of the hackers emerged online. One popular theory pointed towards a group of tech-savvy pranksters associated with Chicago's underground music or art scene. The spinning background was identified as similar to a visual effect used in the music video for the song "You Spin Me Round Like a Record" by the band Dead or Alive, which was popular at the time. The overall aesthetic felt like something that could have emerged from the city's industrial music or performance art circles. Another persistent theory involved a former engineer from WGN who had been fired and might have sought revenge. This theory gained some traction because the technical knowledge required for the hack seemed to point towards an insider. However, no concrete evidence ever linked any specific individual to the crime. Some even suggested links to organized groups, either political or anarchic, trying to make a statement against corporate media. The anti-consumerist message, particularly the mockery of Coca-Cola, seemed to support this idea. The incident also spawned its own mythology. Rumors circulated about alleged copycat incidents or supposed confessions that could never be verified. The very anonymity of the hacker turned them into a kind of digital folk villain, a phantom who briefly hijacked reality itself. The Max Headroom broadcast signal intrusion remains fascinating precisely because it is unsolved. It represents a moment of pure, inexplicable chaos injected directly into the mainstream. It's a reminder of a time before the internet completely democratized weirdness, a time when television was the dominant cultural force, and the idea of that force being subverted felt truly shocking. The man in the mask may have only been on screen for a couple of minutes, but his bizarre performance has echoed through the decades, a haunting piece of analog static in our increasingly digital world. Act 5. The Unsolved Signal. More than 3 decades have passed since that bizarre November night in 1987. The world has changed almost beyond recognition. The analog television signals that the Max Headroom hacker hijacked are now relics of the past, replaced by secure digital broadcasts and the endless stream of the internet. Max Headroom himself, once the face of the future, is now a nostalgic footnote, a piece of 80s ephemera. Yet, the mystery of the broadcast signal intrusion endures, unsolved and deeply unsettling. Who was the man behind the mask? Was he a disgruntled employee, a tech-savvy prankster, a political activist, or someone simply testing the limits of the system? What was the meaning behind the bizarre performance? The Pepsi can, the fly swatter, the rambling monologue. Was it a sophisticated critique of media culture disguised as chaos, or just the meaningless antics of someone reveling in their newfound power over the airwaves? The statute of limitations for the crime has long since expired. Even if the perpetrators were identified today, they could not be prosecuted. Yet, no one has ever come forward to credibly claim responsibility. The participants in one of the most famous hacks in history have remained completely silent, taking their secrets with them. Perhaps the silence itself is the most chilling part of the story. The incident serves as a potent reminder of the vulnerability of our communication systems, even in the supposedly secure digital age. While hijacking a major television network today would be far more difficult, new forms of digital intrusion and manipulation emerge constantly. The Max Headroom incident was a bizarre preview of the kind of information chaos that would become commonplace in the internet era. It also remains a fascinating cultural artifact. It was a moment when the underground crashed the mainstream, when the carefully controlled flow of information was disrupted by a blast of pure, anarchic static. The image of the distorted, grinning Max Headroom mask, swaying in front of that spinning metal background, has become an iconic symbol of technological rebellion and the uncanny weirdness lurking just beneath the surface of our mediated reality. In the end, the Max Headroom incident is a mystery without a clear victim or a tangible crime beyond the trespass of the airwaves. Yet, it continues to fascinate and disturb because it represents a moment where reality itself seemed to glitch. For 90 seconds, the normal programming of the world was interrupted by a transmission from somewhere else, somewhere strange, chaotic, and unknown. And then, just as quickly, the signal is lost, leaving behind only the buzzing static of unanswered questions. The identity of the hacker, the meaning of their message, and the secrets of that November night remain, like a corrupted file in the archives of television history, forever unsolved.